Hello everyone, this is Carbonomics, and this video will be about Aduro Clean Technologies and what their recycling process does differently than existing competitors. There's other content out there to better understand Aduro's plastic recycling process in general, but I haven't seen any truly in-depth comparisons between some of the publicly traded plastic recycling companies. The main two primary comparisons for Aduro being Cielo Waste Solutions and PureCycle Technologies. Now, before we talk about those companies in more detail, let's review the main types of plastic recycling. The most well-known version is thermolysis, also known as pyrolysis. This is the usage of high levels of heat to break down plastic waste. Then we have sovolysis, which is probably the most similar to Aduro's in the sense that this is chemical recycling, likely using some type of catalyst to break down plastic. And then the last common type of recycling is solvation, which refers to a mechanical sorting process of plastic. Which when you hear mechanical recycling, the first image that will come to mind, you'll probably be thinking of workers or robots physically sorting good plastic from bad. Well, that's not the case. In this situation, mechanical recycling refers to any process that's sorting plastic without, breaking down its chemical structure. So that means, any grinding, compounding, or separating process using things like solvents is considered mechanical recycling as well. So those are the three main types of plastic recycling used today. None of them are particularly profitable, especially without subsidies. The existing processes cannot recycle around 80 to 90% of plastic waste out there right now. The vast majority of it just goes to landfills. So most of these processes are either extremely energy or mechanically intensive. And for some of the better technologies like PureCycle solvation or mechanical process, where they use a solvent to separate the plastic from contaminants, its drawbacks is that it can only recycle one type of plastic, polypropylene. And it doesn't even break down that plastic so you can turn it into other products either. This process can only be used to create more usable plastic. PureCycle is one of the publicly traded companies that are comparable to Aduro, currently sitting at a $1 billion market cap. Now, they have a higher market cap because they're further along in the development and commercialization process than Aduro. PureCycle will have its first facility to recycle plastic mechanically complete very soon here, in the first quarter of 2023. Currently looking to finance the construction of more in 2024. And Aduro, by comparison, is still building out pilot plants. So that's the cause for some of the discrepancy in market cap there. As Aduro has a market cap of $45 million right now. But think about that though. PureCycle has a market cap of around $1 billion, and they don't even have an operational plan yet. There's barely any or no revenues. So PureCycle doesn't even own its technology either. Procter & Gamble actually invented that technology that they're using. And as I mentioned earlier, they can only recycle polypropylene. So that's a major downside to their technology. And let's look at another type of recycling here. If you look at sovolysis, which is more chemical recycling, let's look at Carbios at the top there. What's their process? So Carbios has a depolymerization process using an enzyme to break down the plastic. And good for them, their process allows them to deal with more contaminants in their waste feedstock. But another issue here, though, the company can only recycle PET waste, which is polyethylene. So they can only break down one type of plastic as well. Same thing as PureCycle. So going back to the main types of recycling here, all these processes have some issue holding them back. It's too energy intensive. They can't deal with any real contamination in their plastic, so it has to be, perfectly clear plastic waste essentially, or they can't deal with multiple types of plastic. Aduro's new hydrochemolytic process absolutely changes the game, and it's why the company has so much interest from big players in the plastic space right now. Aduro has spent over a decade designing and testing this process, dedicated to lowering costs and increasing the efficiency of recycling. Aduro's chemolysis process takes water and a chemical catalyst, like glycerol or cellulose, to break down plastics or other materials back into oils. And as you may or may not know, plastic is made from petroleum product. So that plastic can be turned back into naphtha, which can then go into a naphtha cracker to produce more plastic for a circular economy concept, essentially. Um, or it can be turned into other products as well, like kerosene, diesel, or lubricants. So there are actually a variety of advantages to Aduro's process. For one, as I mentioned earlier, they can not only process and recycle most types of plastic, but they can break down and recycle other materials as well. Heavy oil or bitumen, renewable fuels, potentially even rubber tires, and more. Additionally, Aduro can recycle the three main types of plastic: polyethylene, polypropylene, and polystyrene. This chart's from 2015, but as you can see here, PP stands for polypropylene, PE is polyethylene, and PS is polystyrene. So the company can recycle most, potentially even every type of plastic. This is a stark difference between Aduro and its competitors. And the focus has been on plastic recycling for now out of Aduro, but there are so many avenues the company can go over time. It's kind of crazy to think about. Some other key differences are that because the process uses water, it is significantly less energy intensive than using heat, which is one of the reasons why other technologies are so expensive to use, if even profitable at all. Because it uses water, you don't need to worry about drying or cleaning the waste feedstock ahead of time. The water can take care of a lot of that, so there's less sorting needed. Duro has designed the technology to be relatively easy to scale. So the design of the process was modular in nature. So it's simple to add on, small or additional reactors to scale as needed. And because this technology is so versatile, there are a variety of costs this company doesn't have to incur. Another example being transportation costs, because other technologies can only process, the best type of waste feedstock out there. So those companies have to ship in plastic waste from other countries even, which can be expensive, just for them to recycle it. So there are many positives to this technology, and it almost sounds too good to be true. And it's definitely healthy to be skeptical. I think everyone is when they first hear about this story. I know I was as well. So let's talk about another company that has similar promises, and they didn't deliver on those. Cielo Waste Solutions, which is a company that is compared to Aduro all the time. And let's ask the question, why did they fail, and what has Aduro done differently in comparison to Cielo? This is Cielo stock, and as you can see, the price has absolutely tanked. This company has been incredibly hyped up previously, hitting a $1 billion valuation or above that, with largely nothing to show for it. And the company is on its third CEO over the span of a few years here. Cielo was a company that promised to use a process called thermal catalytic depolymerization to take plastic or other waste and turn it into diesel, kerosene, naphtha. So very similar promises to what Aduro is saying now. And they take that feedstock in a low temperature environment, which was set to be an improvement as most processes use a lot more energy. Taking that plastic waste with a catalyst to process the feedstock into a liquid, which can then be reheated to a higher temperature, injecting energy into the solution to produce that fuel, diesel, naphtha, etc. So what went wrong here? Well, there was so much hype around the company. They raised all this money, they took on debt as well. Then they built a facility in Aldersyde, Alberta, Canada. And one thing after another continues to go wrong with the technology. First they come out and say, hey guys, we can actually only produce fuel from wood waste, not even plastic. If we want to further test using plastic, we need to build an R&D facility, which means the company needs to raise even more money. Oops. Even worse, the Aldersyde facility. Turns out they can't even produce the 2,000 liters of fuel per hour they said they would. They can only design it to do 1,000 right now. And they did test it and produce some fuel. They started working on building out to 1,000 liters per hour with a new reactor. So they needed a new reactor in the Aldersyde facility, and they're building out an R&D facility. Then they come out and say the inflationary environment has led to 50% higher costs in their August 2022 update. So they can't do what they called Phase 2 of the Aldersyde facility, and instead they have to shift their focus to just building out the R&D facility only. One of the reasons behind that being after they tried to run their facility to produce fuel in Aldersyde for just 10 days, the system couldn't handle it. So, there goes the company's source of revenue, which already wasn't great to begin with. So the system's failing. They can't operate the Alderside facility, and they shut it down. So they're not producing fuel at all anymore. So that's where they are now, building out an R&D facility and hopefully building out a design for a commercial facility in 2023. Completely failing on investor expectations. Now, what has been done differently with Aduro? And there's always potential risk that something goes wrong. Don't misunderstand me. But Aduro has tested their technology extensively, with plans to build out a pilot reactor, recycling several tons of plastic waste per day. And the R3 pilot plant, it's hopefully going to be done in 2023 or early 2024. And Aduro also hasn't had to walk back, any of its promises so far in comparison to Cielo. What Aduro has that validates the technology over Cielo is their partners. And it's not a guarantee the technology will properly scale, but it has performed extremely well in every test so far. And the management team thinks it's nearly guaranteed to work at scale. The question is just how efficient the technology and yield will be. Now, Cielo did have an agreement with a large company, Canadian Pacific Railway, to supply them with fuel, but that didn't really involve any testing of the technology, from my understanding. And even if it did, clearly Cielo's technology has failed so far. And Aduro's partners are nothing to scoff at either, and we'll get into that right now. The first partnership Aduro has is with Brightlands Camelot. Brightlands is one of the top 10 central hubs of recycling and innovative technologies globally. A variety of the majors in the industry conduct research here. And after reviewing the tech for 12 months, Brightlands felt comfortable saying that they think Aduro's solution is different from the rest, and it wanted to help Aduro scale its technology, building a pilot plant to show off to industry players. The second piece of validation we can see as shareholders is with the third-party validation of Aduro's technology. With an R2 pilot plant on bitumen, which would be similar to the plastic one, just slightly different, which can recycle multiple kilograms of heavy oils per day in a continuous flow reactor in the bitumen plant. The technology was validated by Dr. Charpentier, who's in the Department of Chemical and Biochemical Engineering at Western University in Ontario, which is one of the most research-intensive universities in the world, ranked number 1 in Canada and number 3 in the world for sustainable developments. So, okay, maybe the team at Western was biased towards Aduro because they worked with Aduro in the past, and Aduro often sources new talent from the university. You're not convinced by Brightlands either. Well, then we have Shell Game Changer. Aduro was selected because of its decarbonization aspects of its technology to be in the Shell Game Changer program, which is a program dedicated to commercializing and scaling innovative technologies. So now Aduro's building out a 6-phase, 12-month project with Shell to demonstrate the scalability of its technology. I believe Aduro was in talks with Shell for over a year, where Shell had clearly conducted pretty extensive due diligence on the technology and its viability. And Shell has a clear knowledge of the chemistry and plastic industry, as they are a large plastic producer themselves, producing around 1 million tons of plastic per year. So this is a 200 billion market cap company teaming up with a tiny 45 million market cap company to scale its recycling technology. And keep in mind, this announcement came before Aduro had even finished testing its R2 reactor for plastics. So this is essentially going off of lab results alone and the results from the R2 bitumen plant. If that's not enough validation in your mind for this technology, that it at least has potential, then I don't know what else would. This is really insane to think about. But in a previous video of mine on Shell Game Changer, I talked about how Aduro, just recycling Shell's plastic waste alone in a licensing model gets them to a multi-billion-dollar valuation. And that's just off of 1 million tons of plastic waste, not even including other market verticals or additional partners. So if you want to learn more about Aduro, I'd recommend watching my other 2 videos that I made on the company, one being a broad introduction and the other being that video about Aduro being accepted into the Shell Game Changer program. And I'll link that in the description below. But if you enjoy this video, hit the like button, and if you want to see more ESG-themed investment content, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss any of my future videos. Thanks for watching.